Oh, hold on, wait a minute. You guys, we are live, but Ben, I don't know if the local recording's turned on or not.
Uh-oh, you're in the show.
Dun dun
Well, maybe
dun.
no one wants to record us.
Well,
Well, by the way, if we're not being recorded, then there's no evidence, so we can really be unvarnished.
Okay, it
My
looks like the
favorite.
local recordings didn't turn on, honey. Is there anything we can do about that? Do we care? We're not going to sweat it this time. All right, you guys, the joys of live television.
The joys of is this live TV? Is a podcast really live TV?
I mean, who watches TV anymore?
So, well, you know why we don't watch TV anymore?
Why?
It's a
Because
nice
it's
segue. Because we're no longer a free country. Did you
oh,
know that?
tell me more.
And
I mean,
and because we're no longer a free country, the France wants their statue back. I don't know if you heard that, but the French politician said because America is no longer America, we want the Statue of Liberty back.
that is
So,
rich
so,
coming from the
so,
French.
so, I was really thinking maybe we could do like a three-way trade, like they do in baseball, like a multi-team trade. Like we give the Statue of Liberty to Panama, they give us back the canal, right? And we don't care if we're free or not. And France can, I don't know, get free passage through the canal or something.
So wait a second. France didn't say that we weren't free anymore when we were doing lockdowns, forcing people to
Right.
do that stuff, or literally just throwing our republic in the toilet. But now, what is it? Because of Trump? Oh,
So,
orange
of course.
man.
So a French member of parliament, he is Senator left, Raphael Glucksmann, if I'm pronouncing this correctly, says, um, we're going to say that Americans who have chosen to side with the tyrants to be Americans who fired researchers, blah, blah, give us back the Statue of Liberty. So, I mean, by the way, this is from the country where they have, liberté, égalité, and fraternity, right? And fraternity, right, which would be, freedom, equality, and brotherhood, right? I mean, these are the guys where the Muslims are taking over the country and they have DEI all over the place anyway.
This is what I'm saying. This is so rich coming from freaking France.
So wait, am I allowed to call it like a politically incorrect word? Would that make them like Indian givers? Is that allowed?
You're definitely not allowed to say that anymore.
Yeah.
That is definitely not allowed.
Okay. Shows you how old I am. Okay.
But they are definitely Indian givers.
By the way,
Let's be real.
Hey, give the statue back, and by the way, they can have our huddled masses back too, right? They're the ones that way Trump won't have to deport them and deal with rogue judges. In any event, let's roll the show. Let's go. Hello, and welcome to Of the People, the Alien Enemies Act of 1798. So, unless you're living under a rock, everybody in the country knows that Trump has invoked this act to deport illegal, violent immigrants, most notably Trenduagua, if I could say that properly, thank you very much, to Venezuela. And right on cue, what you're hearing from the Democrats is their new mantra: rule of law, rule of law, rule of law. On a serious note, just once, I would actually like to have a civil discourse where we disagree on things, and if people are opposed to deportation, let's have a conversation. But if you know the law, this one in particular, and I would say that the Democrats were probably absent from history class when this one was being taught, maybe, right? But once again, they're cherry picking the information because they're saying, well, the Enemies Act of 1798 is only for during wartime. Wrong, right? And it was last used by FDR. Wrong again. And Trump's a dictator. He's a fascist. He's going to lead to a constitutional crisis. So I happen to have with me a copy of the law, which I should read to you. And the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 says the following: that whenever there shall be a declared war between the United States and any foreign nation or government, or any invasion of predatory incursion shall be perpetrated, attempted, or threatened against the territory of the United States, ... these people shall be liable to be apprehended, restrained, secured, removed as alien enemies. So there's a word in there, right? There's part of first half says clearly about war, but the second half it says, or any invasion or predatory incursion shall be perpetrated, attempted, or threatened against the territory of the United States by any foreign nation or government. All native citizens, et cetera, shall be liable to be apprehended, retained, secured, or removed. So the question is, were they just absent from history class on that day? Or are they once again cherry picking the law? Because look, all laws are subject to interpretation, precedence, review, revision, sometimes repeal. But laws are not immutable like math, right? 2 + 2 always equals 4. But laws are subject to interpretation. So the other thing is to have them rail about rule of law, given what we just came through in the Obama years and the Biden years, is about as priceless a hypocrisy as I have ever seen. Where were all these, how should we call them, rule of lawyers during the Biden years and the Obama years? Let's see. How many Hatch Act violations were there during the Biden years? The destruction of evidence, both in the Obama administration and the Biden administration, not to mention the destruction of evidence or documents when Trump was taking office. Then, of course, there's the evidence in Joe's Garage, not to, bastardize a really great album from the 60s, which is Frank Zappa's Joe's Garage. And let's not forget Fast and Furious gun running, paying ransom to Iran to release hostages, which is illegal. Both of those things were deemed to be illegal, and IRS targeting of the conservative groups also ruled to be illegal. But the hypocrisy from the left is best summed up with one name and one name only: Hillary Rodham Clinton. And of course, her email servers, where she kept confidential and secure information, national security information on her private server, illegal, destroyed the servers and the phones that went with it. And folks, this wasn't just about applying the law improperly, because that's what they're accusing Trump of doing. This is about a criminal violation. And so I get this right. It's actually 18 U.S. Code 793 of mishandling classified information. So to my Democratic friends and friends on the left, now that Donald Trump is president, please tell us which laws we need to follow and which ones we don't, because clearly you guys are better at this than we are. And as for the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, that's going to go to the Supreme Court. A lot of the other things that Trump is doing is going to go to the Supreme Court, and I think that's the plan. It's not going to lead to a constitutional crisis, but it will lead to a rebalancing of the separation of powers between the branches of government. I think Trump is within his constitutional framework on most of this. I think he'll win most, he'll lose a couple, and that's the way it goes. But for now, to paraphrase that great legal scholar, Slick Willie, when it comes to the Aliens Enemies Act, it really does depend on what the meaning of the word "or" is. And that's the monologue. Ericka, come on back in, because I am psyched to have with us David Brog, Executive Director of Maccabee Task Force, former Chief of Staff to Arlen Specter, author, consultant, activist. Just how he accomplishes all this, I don't know, but we're going to start on the law side because he's a lawyer. He's I like the smart guys. So let's bring David in.
All right, David, welcome.
And by the way, nice merch, which I do also want to get into. So right,
Dun, 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 dun.
Israel Appreciation Day.
This.
And David, thank you for being a guest on his and you were the anchor of the event, and absolutely one of the best speeches of the night. So thank you for being part of Israel Appreciation Day, and thank you for being on Of the People.
Thank you very much, Robert. I appreciate that. It was an honor to participate. Great to be with you. Ericka, great to be with you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
So I want to start with the word "or," because you are, Princeton, Harvard, you are the smart guy, right? The word "or" in what I just read makes a difference, does it not? In terms of how, now again, I'm not asking you to rule for the courts, but
I'm asking you to.
Well,
yeah, absolutely. The word "or" means it doesn't have to be all the first prong, doesn't have to be that kind of full-fledged invasion. If the second prong is met after the "or," then this law and its provisions would apply. That is the simple interpretation, and usually the simple interpretation is the one that will prevail.
Well, and it was funny listening to Robert read that because I was thinking, you're trying to say this doesn't apply, but we have gang members taking over whole apartment complexes in various cities. You've got, they're running people across the border. I mean, all this crazy stuff. If that's what was the word, Robert? It was like an incursion, a violent.
So Ben should have the language if he can put it up. I'd love David
Okay.
to see this as well. I don't know if Ben
Okay.
was able to put that up, but
Let me
basically
see.
it says declare. It basically says perpetrated, attempted, or threatened against the territory of the United States. Right.
Yeah.
So I mean, the only thing that they can do on this, David, is it says shall be by any foreign nation or government. So the only thing they could say is, well, these are not related to foreign governments, but rumor has it that the trendy Aragua immigrants may be sending money back to Maduro. Now, that's not proven. I haven't seen that. But wouldn't that...
Yeah, go ahead.
And the question is what is the participation of government necessary to trigger this? Is it at the direction of, or is it with the benign neglect of? When they allow these people to come, that is also government action. So I think you said it very well, Robert. The courts are going to decide this. It's an interesting legal issue because we're taking an older law and applying it to new, modern circumstances. But you have to figure that our legislature, at some point in our history, gave the executive the power to do exactly this. When we see our border being overrun, when we see an emergency being created by the fact that we can no longer control our border,
right?
Should not and does not our executive have the power to act? And so it makes sense to me. I think the common sense interpretation is our executive would have the power to act, and this may be the means by which the executive was given the power. I'll tell you, but if the courts will decide, and I'll tell you this, if they decide that this law doesn't apply, then I think Congress needs to act because it's clearly something is missing in our laws and something is missing in the power given to our executive when they can't act given these circumstances, as extreme as they've been. He has to have a remedy.
Absolutely.
And you have to love the creativity. You have to love the fact that they're looking back through history and finding what the legal rationale may well be, with confidence that this is not the first time. You rarely encounter issues for the first time. So with some confidence that this is not the first time we've encountered a problem like this, and perhaps we've solved this problem already.
That's so true because I feel like so much of the time you hear politicians hiding behind, oh, well, we don't know what to do. Oh, our hands are tied. Oh, we need a new immigration law that allows 5,000 people in a day. No, we don't. This stuff, it's already in place. Who do you think is the mastermind behind all of this amazing stuff Trump is doing? Do you think it's just one person, or do you think it's a whole team finding this stuff?
My sense is there's a team now. When President Trump was elected the first time, it took him a while to find the right team, the right advisors. He had mixed advice. And a lot of his team, and I know these people, I spent a lot of time on Capitol Hill. A lot of his team was sort of the old style Republican that played by certain rules that typically work to our great disadvantage. He was being counseled. This is the way you have to do it. You can't go beyond these rules or this format. Otherwise, you'll be perceived as extreme or excessive.
Yeah.
And not having a lot of experience in the White House, not having a lot of Washington experience, he listened to a lot of these folks. But he learned, I think, over the course of his first term, that the only way to get something done and the only way to overcome the barriers that the Democrats will inevitably throw at you, both legal and extra legal, is to change the way you play this game. They change the way they play the game. They change the way they deal with a situation where there's a Republican in the White House, a conservative in the White House, and one they don't like. The only way you can overcome their opposition is for us also to change the way we play the game. Yeah. So I think both his personal experience, his education in real time, and the team he assembled of people who are not typical Washington creatures.
Yep.
They knew what they were doing. They hit the ground running very intentionally, creating these first weeks of nonstop action.
Right.
Yeah,
And
it
I would
had to
argue,
be pre-planned.
yeah, and I would argue, David, that you've heard the term "flood the zone," and that was really in reference to all the executive orders that he signed, the flurry of them, in the first couple of weeks, and he continues to sign them. But I think they were very clear, and they understood that the only weapon that the Democrats have to fight back is lawfare, and I think they're flooding the zone selectively on that, pushing certain laws and pushing certain policies that they believe in keeping with Trump's promises that he promised to deliver, but doing it in such a way that they want this to go before the Supreme Court, not just this law, but several other things, because there is now such an imbalance between the executive branch and the judicial branch. And as we see, the judicial branch is interceding, I would argue, way overstepping their authority on certain policy things in order precluding the executive from functioning. Right. So I think it was perhaps not premeditated, but close.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's exactly the way to do it. Let's bring these things up one after the other, and then let the Supreme Court decide. And,
all right. So there we have it. Yeah, it's a little too small to read, but basically, I read you the salient parts. So I want to jump from this, because you were also former executive. You helped to found, and you're the former executive director of Christians United for Israel. You're now the executive director of Maccabee Task Force as well, which you helped to found. But the Christians United for Israel is sort of one aspect of the global war against terrorism and in defending Western values. The beachhead or front on college campuses is something different. I want to get to that a little later, right? They're a connected war. But how do you see, where is the support within the Christian community at large at this moment in time in this country, not just for Israel, because it's about Judeo-Christian values, but where are they in this?
So we're very fortunate. I mean, there's good news and bad news. Let's start with the good news. We're very fortunate in that our small Jewish community of 6 million or less, mostly Democrats, mostly on the coasts, is not the only base of support for Israel in our country. That is too few people, too thin a reed upon which to base support for Israel. We've been very lucky that support for Israel is much broader and deeper than that. And the fact is, there are millions of evangelical Christians who support Israel in a very deep and very personal way. And they support Israel for reasons that are very similar to the reasons why an Orthodox Jew would support Israel. I mean, it starts with their faith. It starts with the way they read the Bible. But it really doesn't end there. These are people who understand the tragedy of Jewish history. They understand what the world, and oftentimes, in the name of their own faith, was done to Jews by people they would argue are not true Christians. They understand the need for a Jewish state. And then these are people who understand the history of Israel in a way that most people don't anymore.
Yeah.
And they understand the justice of Israel's fight for survival and self-defense. And so these are tens of millions of Christian allies that we have in New York and LA too, but we also have in every congressional district in between. And I would go further than that. I would argue, lots of people, and you see the conspiracy theories on the right now, AIPAC is buying all of our politicians. It's only because of Jewish money that we're pro-Israel. That is such nonsense. And anyone who spent time in Washington understands how much this is nonsense. And the answer is, of course, that it's not just Jews, but it's also not just evangelical Christians. There is, I think, in most Americans, going back now since the founding, since the founding fathers, and we can quote John Adams and his sympathy for the idea of a Jewish state, over a century before Theodore Herzl, was even a big.
Wow, that's
this
amazing.
Goes back. And so when Jews and Christians go to Washington to lobby on behalf of Israel, they are pushing on an open door, because most Americans love Israel and most Americans are sympathetic to Israel. But that's the good news. Unfortunately, there's some troubling trends we have to be aware of. And that is the fact that a majority of Americans support Israel is still true if you look at Americans over the age of 50. You look at Americans under the age of 30, and all of a sudden you're seeing a young generation that, knows not Joseph, that doesn't understand Israel, that doesn't know what the Holocaust was.
Yeah,
that
they
doesn't
don't remember the intifadas and the constant
They don't know the
war.
tragedy of Jewish history, and they don't know the justice of Israel's fight for survival, because they don't know the facts, like you're saying, Ericka. They don't know what led to the wars, what led to the conflicts, what led to the suffering.
That's right.
Even among evangelicals, we're seeing young evangelicals don't support Israel like their parents. And then the last thing that deeply troubles me is it used to be evangelical Christians dominated conservative politics in America. They dominated the debate on the right. They're pro-Israel. The right was pro-Israel. Now we're seeing all these new voices on the right that are not evangelicals, that don't love Israel. Some of them are flat out anti-Semitic voices gaining traction on the right. And so we've got a lot of work to do. For years, I've been telling my friends on the left, you've got a lot of work to do. Anti-Semitism is moving from your extreme into your mainstream. It's going to control the Democratic Party. And they'd say, oh, you're being partisan. Oh, no, I'm just observing where anti-Semitism is and where it's become acceptable. Well, now, last couple of years, I can't say that's exclusively a problem of the left. We're seeing it emerge on the right, and we have a lot of work to do to make sure it doesn't go mainstream on the right. Every day, if you look at X, it's got support. It's picking up a head of steam. We've got a lot of work to do to stop it.
Yeah.
And the thing that concerns me, there was a Gallup poll, David, that was recently out. I don't know if you saw the Gallup poll, but it basically said that support for Israel in this country is at an all-time low. It's still the majority, but it's trending in the wrong direction. And I think it was hovering about 52% when you factor it, when you don't do it according to age demographics. And support for Hamas and a Palestinian state, if you will, or supporting for Hamas and Hezbollah and anti-Israel is at an all-time high. Again, only quote unquote 32%, 33%, but again, all-time high, trending in the wrong direction. And when you break it down by age, that's the real concerning part. So no, I get that.
The trends are troubling.
Yeah.
And so if you freeze frame right now, it's still a decent story. And we've seen this before during wartime. Israel's positives tend to go down, then they tend to pick back up. If you freeze the frame, it's still okay. But boy, the trends are troubling, and we can't take this for granted. The ground is shifting.
And the Maccabee Task Force is set up to be part of that education piece and get the word out and stuff like that, correct?
Yeah, we founded the Maccabee Task Force. Sheldon and Miriam Adelson founded it, and I helped them build it back in 2015.
Oh, wow.
In those days, my biggest problem was when I told people what we did. They said, really? Anti-Semitism on campus? Is that really a problem? Is that
right?
Really
is that a thing? Is that a thing?
Since October 7th, not only do people realize it, but now people are jumping to the opposite extreme and telling me it's too late. We've lost the campuses.
What?
We need to fight. Well, they're jumping ahead because we do have a problem on the campuses. And look, on the campus, this is still a problem of the left. Whatever right-wing anti-Zionism and anti-Semitism exists doesn't really have a big following on America's college campuses. America's college campuses, especially student culture and student government in the academic world, is dominated by people of the left. When we're talking about the college campus, we are talking about left-wing anti-Zionism and left-wing anti-Semitism that has now achieved a place of prominence. I'd say it is a default on our campuses.
Yeah.
So we realized this was a problem, back in 2015. The problem even precedes that.
Wow.
And we've been working to find ways to push back against it. And there's actually some good news here, because what we do on campus tends to work. And we do a lot on campus, but the centerpiece of what we do is we're trying to find a way. We know the truth about Israel is at odds with the anti-Israel narrative that dominates progressive circles, dominates woke circles, dominates the campus. But how do you get these people to pay attention to the truth about Israel? You could write a pro-Israel book. I've done it. They're not reading my book. You make pro-Israel videos. I've done it. They're not watching my videos. And you can throw a great falafel brunch with the best falafel in the world. They're not gonna eat your falafel.
Hey, food works. Food works. Free food. Got it. But if you're on college, you need alcohol, though.
Maybe that's what we're doing wrong, Robert.
You need on college camp.
Get them sauced up.
Excuse me. I realize that, you're a Harvard Princeton guy or Princeton Harvard guy, but I'm a McGill guy. Okay. Alcohol on college campuses works. Okay. You want their attention? Just give them free booze.
You've just seized on our big mistake. We're going to make it now the
I love it.
falafel and arak brunch.
Exactly.
Well, so what is your take on just, oh, I'm sorry. If you had a thought you wanted to finish before I ask the next question.
So in the absence of alcohol, at least, so none of these other tools work. So what's a tool that can work to get someone who's wrapped up in this woke progressive mindset to see the truth about Israel?
Yeah.
And one thing we do that works very well is we map our campuses. We find out who are the students who dominate campus politics, almost always left, far left, almost always Israel skeptical, if not outright Israel critical. We take them to Israel. And taking them to Israel is extraordinarily effective, which is something I wouldn't have known or wouldn't have believed until we did it. And we've done it now with over 5,000 students, which says something. It's the only optimistic thing I'm seeing, but I want to share it.
Wow.
A lot of us see the hate on campus. A lot of us see the encampments, and we say to ourselves, what's wrong with these people? Are they anti-Semites who just hate the Jews? Or are most of them good people who believe a false narrative about Israel? And the answer is overwhelmingly, look, there's always going to be 10% of the campus that hates us. We're never going to reach them.
Yep.
There's always going to be 10% of the campus that loves us. We don't need to reach them. But overwhelmingly, that 80% in the middle, that 80% that is increasingly expressing skepticism towards Israel in the polls and sympathy for the Palestinians in the polls, that 80% is overwhelmingly comprised of good people who believe a false narrative about Israel. A narrative, by the way, that if you or I believed it, we'd also hate Israel.
Yeah.
And when you show them that the truth is so starkly at odds with that false narrative, it changes them. And it changes their behavior when they get back to campus.
Yeah.
And so the truth about Israel remains an extremely powerful thing. And if we can find ways to get that truth into this very tall and thickly walled progressive woke silo, we can change hearts and minds. And so that's what we do. We found a way to do it through the trips. And then after the trip, using each of our trip participants as a bridge to their respective communities on campus, we can win new allies. We can then form larger coalitions, and we can win more often than we lose. So is the campus lost? No. We just have to get in there and fight. And if we don't always win, well, that means we need to invest more, not less. So there's some here, even in the belly of the beast, even on the American college campus, even on prestigious American college campuses.
Speaking of prestigious, check out my...
Speaking of Together We Win.
Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to take a quick break. You guys, first of all, this sweatshirt is awesome. It is nice and thick and soft. It's beautiful. Together We Win. It's got the beautiful artwork from Albert Levy. I got my water bottle. Yay. Okay, you guys go. You guys have to go. Hold on. Let me share my screen. You guys have to go to Israel Appreciation Day and go check out the merch. So if you hit merch at the top, it opens up our fancy little launch cart here. And you've got the logo for Israel Appreciation Day or the artwork from Albert Levy. You can get the t-shirt with the flag on the front or the back, depending on how you like it. Mugs. There's even a lady's little crop top. I almost got this one, but I need to lose a few more pounds before I can justify wearing this. This is for the young ladies. This is for young people, not old ladies like me. But
Eric, if you're old, what does that make me and David?
You're ancient. Sorry to let you know. You're antique.
Ouch.
You're antique.
By the way, you're doing the show on the other side of the break by yourself. David and I are going to go get our canes and sort of hobble.
I'm turning 47. I'm turning 47 tomorrow. I'm like, what? It's crazy. Yeah. So
there's just something wrong with that.
You guys go to Israel Appreciation Day, check out the merch. You can donate to our sponsor, Israel Appreciation Day. Like David, the point of Israel Appreciation Day is to highlight the special relationship between Israel and the United States, that this isn't just we are our allies, or, you know, our relationship with Israel is more than just an ally. They are our partner in the Middle East, and why that relationship is so important. Sure, there's plenty to criticize the government of Israel. There's plenty to criticize every government there is on earth. But what really matters is why we are united together fighting for Western values. So go support the channel, support our sponsor, Israel Appreciation Day.
Thank
Yay.
you. Thank you. I love
Yes.
that read. So
Thank you.
I want to jump over to Israel because a little known fact is you're cousin to a former prime minister of Israel.
Oh,
Yes.
Right. So,
Yes.
okay. So didn't think I knew that, did you, David? Okay. You know, there's nothing in life I can't find out. I just want you to know that it's a Jersey thing. I just put that out there. So Bibi Netanyahu, prime minister of Israel, to my opinion, has been a historic figure, but I understand that he's controversial, you know, certainly outside of Israel. But how do you assess the jobs he's doing? Because from my opinion, the real stroke of genius was going into Rafah, because that was really the game changer in all of this. But, you know, as we go to broadcast, the ceasefire was broken. What was it? March 5th, it expired. They tried to extend the ceasefire. Hamas didn't want it. So Israel just launched missile strikes into Gaza to, you know, obviously take out the leadership, and hopefully we can get back the rest of the hostages. But focus to me on the prime minister and the job that you think he's doing in Israel and, you know, the war in general.
Yeah. You know, Bibi Netanyahu is a much maligned character, and including my cousin now is a leading critic of Bibi Netanyahu. I look at Bibi and I respect him, and I give him credit for two things. First of all, a lot of people don't remember this, but when he was Israel's finance minister in the 1990s, because he was educated in America and sort of imbibed American conservatism, he liberalized, in the, you know, the old-fashioned meaning of the word. He liberalized Israel's economy. He moved it from socialism to free market.
Oh,
that enabled the startup nation that is Israel. Really, if it weren't for Bibi's reforms in the 1990s, Israel would not have been able to achieve what it's achieved through its economy today. The startup nation that it is. The high standard of living. Israel just surpassed Great Britain in its standard of living. It's truly tremendous. And I find it a bit ironic because we have a lot of friends in Israel who don't agree with me politically. They don't like Bibi. They're living well with high-tech salaries that are only enabled because of Bibi's reforms, sitting there criticizing Bibi as if he's the devil. So let's give the devil his due. And then with the war you mentioned, Robert, I give Bibi enormous credit because the pressure upon him not to go into Rafah.
From the White House, from the Biden White House.
From the Biden White House.
Right.
The incredible bad advice, the incredible pressure not to fight Hamas, not to go into Rafah, to, in a sense, let Hamas off the hook while the hostages were being held, while Hamas was in power. The pressure was so enormous, I think other leaders would have buckled to it. And indeed, there are signs that opposition leader Benny Gantz wanted to buckle to it. I think that would have been a tremendous mistake and a tremendous error that would have doomed the future of the state of Israel. And Bibi had the strength and the fortitude not to buckle, to wait it out, to ultimately go in. And it was only when Israel went into Rafah and really did damage to Hamas that you saw that there was more movement in freeing hostages. And you saw the potential future, really the only future for Israel, a potential future in which Hamas is dislodged from Gaza. Thank God, and I don't say thank God lightly. Thank God Donald Trump was elected, if only for the fact that he understands the realities in the Middle East far more clearly. The prior administration's misunderstanding of the nature of Hamas, their misunderstanding of the nature of the connection between Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran and the Houthis. It was an ignorance that really was diplomatic malpractice. This administration at least understands the nature of Hamas, understands the nature of Hezbollah and Iran, and understands and the Houthis, and understands that these are not only enemies of Israel, but very much enemies of the United States of America. And it's with this kind of partner that Israel can do what it has to do to save the future for Israel, and I believe ultimately serve our purposes in the Middle East in a very real way without any American boots on the ground.
This is the thing that's driven me crazy for the last 2 years is what in the heck is the Biden administration thinking?
Wait, Ericka. So what I was going to say, and David, I think it's scholarly analytics, but the one point that I would disagree with you on is I don't think the Biden administration misunderstood. I think the Biden administration was intentional. It was an extent because their worldview of the Middle East was centered on Iran as the key player in the Middle East, and they were trying to remake. I mean, the Jews and Israel would have been collateral damage, right? I think this was an extension of the Obama foreign policy, by and large. I mean, slightly different, but carried out through the Biden years. So I have a hard time thinking that was a misunderstanding. I mean, they started right after October 7th calling for a proportionate response.
This is what I'm saying.
Right,
there's never been a two-state solution for as long as I have been alive on this earth. Like these people hate us. They hate Israel. Why are you trying to be reasonable?
David, I'd like to introduce you to Ericka, my better half.
I appreciate Ericka's.
It's maddening
because it will drive you insane. And you're right, Robert. I'm in a sense I'm giving them too much credit because I think some of it was confusion. Look, when you lack a moral compass, when you lack moral clarity, it's easy to get confused. And I think some of them are just confused. But you're right. Some of them knew damn well what they were doing, but they were afraid of their base. They were afraid.
Right. That's exactly right.
Party. They wanted the Arab votes in Michigan. And so they were willing to throw Israel to the wolves in order to win re-election, given how anti-Israel their parties become. So at best, they were confused and ignorant. And you're probably right. Many of them weren't so good. They knew damn well what they were doing and they were prepared to do it. And
That's
this is
so
salvation.
Gross.
I said to my wife before election, my wife's Israeli, when I was running for office, I was running here in Nevada, and I was not successful. We were having a conversation, and first thing we said was, "What would you rather have? You, David, win your race for assembly, or Trump win?" And I thought about it, and I said, "Trump. I'd rather lose and have Trump win." And then my wife's question was why, and I said, "Well, if Trump loses, I'm worried for the future of the United States.
The game's over if Trump lost.
I'm worried, for our border, for our culture, for our security." But I said, I'm even more worried for Israel because I think Israelis will pay the price for American stupidity first. We will pay later. And so this victory is given a window and breathing space for us, for the United States. And more immediately, it's given a window and breathing space for Israel to do what it has to do. And got to be grateful for that.
Before the Abraham Accords, when was the last time there was a peace treaty in the Middle East that was respected?
Well, there were the Oslo Accords.
Okay.
And the Oslo Accords of the 1990s proved to be a tremendous failure. And
that's right.
You have to ask why. And this brings us back to my cousin, Robert. But, Rabin and Arafat shake hands on the White House lawn, and they start a process to gradually transfer the land of Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, and Gaza to the control of the Palestinian Authority. Immediately, Hamas starts blowing up buses, restaurants, and cafes. Why? We have a peace treaty. We're going to hand over all this land to the Palestinians.
They don't want peace.
Very clear. Hamas didn't want peace. So they weren't created, because of the alleged occupation. They were created to stop the process by which a Palestinian state was going to be created, because that Palestinian state would have lived side by side with the Jewish state. And anyone who has any confusion about this, of course, you have to read the Hamas charter, which makes their intentions pretty clear in the preamble, which states Israel will exist and continue to exist until Islam will obliterate it. You have to thank them for their honesty. What happened, though, is Yasser Arafat, running the Palestinian Authority, realized that blowing up Israelis made Hamas extraordinarily popular on the Arab street. So he said, gee, if I want to stay popular, I too must blow up Israelis. I say Israelis, not Jews, because the people blown up in the Second Intifada were not just Israeli Jews. There were Israeli Muslims and Israeli Christians together. And so you had this competition to see who could blow up more Israelis that ultimately doomed the peace deal in which Ehud Barak had offered Yasser Arafat everything they claimed they wanted. A Palestinian state in Gaza, 94% of the West Bank, some land from Israel to make up for that 6% that Israel wanted to keep, and half of Jerusalem. Arab East Jerusalem would have been the capital of the Palestinian state. And so a lot of Israelis learned from this Barak offer and Arafat's violent rejection of that offer in the Second Intifada, blowing up Israelis, competing with Hamas to see who could murder more Israelis. It killed the Israeli left. They realized we don't have a partner here for peace. Somehow that lesson in reality didn't translate to the American left, but it killed the Israeli left. And any left-wing Israelis that were remaining, any left-wing Israelis who somehow clung to this dream that we have a partner for peace, despite the fact that our most generous peace offer was met with a wave of terror violence, any of them that were left were either literally murdered on October 7th, because a lot of the kibbutzim, a lot of the kibbutzes near the Gaza border were the ones that were overrun by Hamas terrorists. They were specifically
targeted because of that.
Yeah. They were either literally murdered on October 7th or they finally woke up on October 7th. No one in Israel believes there is a partner for peace that wants a Palestinian state living side by side with Israel. Yet somehow this second lesson, the second dose of reality has not translated to the American left. Instead, as you know, October 7th happens, and on October 8th, they're already protesting Israel. Before Israel even responded, before Israel could even bury the dead, they're protesting Israel in the streets of New York.
Yep.
And 2 days later, October 10th, 30 groups on Harvard University campuses blaming Israel for the massive violence of October 7th. So there's a real disconnect now between the Israeli left that lives in the real world and the American left that lives in some very strange place.
So what do you think about Mahmoud Khalil getting deported? The guy that was running the Columbia
Well, he's not
protests.
deported yet. Right now, I think he's in Texas jail. I think they moved him from Jersey to Texas.
Yeah.
Well, just like we started with an interesting legal issue, this too is an interesting legal issue. They chose someone who not only is on a student visa. Look, if you're just here on a student visa and you participate in these protests that violate the law, and this is not just expression, this is not just speech, this is a violation of the law and the rules of the campuses, they should be on the next plane out. Mahmoud Khalil is also a green card holder.
That's right.
And so it creates a question of what is the process through which you can expel a green card holder. And I think we need to see what that process is. I don't know what it is. But I think Marco Rubio, Secretary of State Rubio, said it very well when he said, look, had he been honest with us when he applied for his green card, had he told us when he applied for his green card, I want to come in and I want to disrupt one of the top universities in America, I want to violate the rules of that university and the laws of the city of New York, and I want to be a leader in an organization that expresses sympathy for a terrorist group as defined by the United States, we probably wouldn't have given him the green card. And if that's the case, shouldn't there be a mechanism by which we could take away that green card? I think that's a compelling case.
So I want to end it. I want to end this segment where we started, which
is he has to stay for another hour and talk to us. I have so many questions.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, that's
okay.
up to you. But I will tell
Go
you,
ahead.
This goes back to the Alien Enemies Act of 1798, because the last time it was used was not during World War II. The last time the act was used was September 8th, 1945. And the war was officially declared over on September 5th. But on September 8th, President Harry Truman also used the act to round up Hispanics in the country that were enemies of America and get rid of them. And if I can find my, here we go. So on September 8th, 1945, Truman issued presidential proclamation, which authorized the Secretary of State to remove enemy aliens that had been sent to the United States from Latin American countries.
Interesting. I think there was some terrorism at the time from Puerto Rican separatists.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That's very interesting.
But there's the original document. Yeah, I just have a reprint. You're going to show me up, Ben? Is that what you're doing?
Yes. Yes.
Last thing I do want to talk about, though, is Reclaiming Israel's History, which was the last book. And you have 3 or 4 or 5 books. I know you got 3 at least, but a lot of books. Smart guy. In there, David, you talk about some of the myths about Israel, right? You talk about some of the myths, whether it's the apartheid myth that Israel's an apartheid country or, genocide. But for our listeners, what's the greatest myth? Well, first of all, here's your book, right? Reclaiming Israel. Well, Standing with Israel is an older book. I have that one as well. But Reclaiming Israel's History is a lot about the myths. What's the single greatest myth that the college kids have on the campus?
Oh,
so it's
about
and
Israel.
this is why, by the way, things have gotten so bad on the campus. What's dominated the campus? What's dominated the far left in recent years? It's been sort of this woke racial ideology that everything is race. Everything is race. That if you're of color, you're more virtuous and discriminated against. If you're white, you are the problem. You are racist, even if you don't realize it.
Yep.
And what's happened is it's been very easy for those who hate Israel to plug Israel into this worldview and say, guess what? When it comes to Israel, we're talking about a white people, the Jews, the Israelis, who are persecuting a noble people of color, the Palestinians.
Oh,
they also claim, by the way,
the noble savages.
The first great sin is racism. What's the second great sin on the college campus today? Colonialism. Well, guess what? These whites who came to Israel are Europeans who have no connection to Israel. They're persecuting and colonizing an indigenous people of color, the Palestinians. So the greatest myth are that Israelis are white, colonial settlers from Europe, and that the Palestinians are this noble indigenous people of color. The reality, of course, is that most Israelis don't trace their roots back to Europe. Most Israelis actually trace their roots back to the Muslim Middle East, from which most Jews were ethnically cleansed after the creation of Israel in 1948. A majority of Israeli Jews now trace their roots back to the Muslim Middle East.
Yeah.
Of course, those Jews who trace their roots back to Europe are not tracing their roots back to people who had no connection to the land of Israel. They're tracing their roots back to Jewish communities that are very much connected to the land of Israel, both through DNA and history. And the idea that we're whites, people laugh when a Jew says we're not white. Well, look at you, look at me, I'm very white, I'm very pale. Well, gee, that would have been nice, 75 years ago when we were sent to death camps because we were a different race, an inferior race, a race that did not have the right to live among the race of native Europeans. So I find it a little rich, the laughter when we have to say, wait a minute, we're not exactly white. We've not exactly been accepted as European.
And this is the thing. Like, look at the map. Okay, this is Israel, like right here. And then everything else is Muslim majority. Everything else, Israelis, Jews are Middle Eastern, technically, if you want to be cute about it.
Not technically.
I mean, but you know what I mean? Like, that's this, they're from this region of the world. To act like somehow it's white people colonizing brown people is just really stupid.
No, but it sells. You see, the narrative sells. The issue is not facts. By the way, in the Obama world of social media driven, Obama for America, sort of monopolize social media. It's not about truth. It's about what sells, and it's about belongingness, and social acceptance, and it's about the narrative that they can sell. David, where am I wrong on this?
You're absolutely right. So that's why the myth is so prevalent. The myth is so easy to believe, and people are so ready to believe it. But that's also why the truth is so powerful. Because when we take students to Israel, I don't care how much they believe this myth, I don't care how much they were anti-Israel, and they land in the multiracial and multicultural celebration that is the modern state of Israel. Even a bad trip to Israel, they say, you know what? I was lied to. This isn't what they told me. Israelis are not white. Israelis are not foreign to this land. And the Palestinians are not exactly the race of Martin Luther King Jr.'s, I was led to believe. They also encounter the fact that suicide bombing is very popular among Palestinians. October 7th was very popular among Palestinians. And so they learn that the myths about both sides that they were taught are not true. And at a minimum, they realize this is much more complex than they were led to believe.
Yeah.
And it is through that opening that we can teach the truth.
Yep.
But, it's interesting. It's interesting, anti-Semites, whatever the great evil of the day is, the anti-Semite will say the Jews are responsible for it. Right? So if capitalism is the enemy, who's the great capitalist?
The Jews!
Trotsky was a Jew, right? So if the great crime today is racism and colonialism, guess who are the most racist of the colonizers?
The Jews!
The greatest story in history of an indigenous people surviving a violent exile and returning to reclaim their homeland. The Jewish people, created in the land of Israel, created in Judea, returned to Judea in peace to live alongside others who have moved there in the interim. It's a really powerful story. And when people connect with the story and see the truth, they change their minds. But boy, do we have a lot of work to do in telling this story.
And that's the modern miracle of Israel, right? Israel Appreciation Day was ancient hope, modern miracle. But David, I want to thank you for coming. Ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking with David Brog, Executive Director of Maccabee Task Force, and so many other things. Author, Politico, consultant, former chief of staff to Senator Specter. I mean, it's a long list, David. Next time, send me the condensed version. But as
Ericka pointed out, I'm old.
Yeah. And Ericka, if you point out, Ericka, that I'm older, I'm done. David, I want to thank you for coming on. Thank you for being part of Israel Appreciation Day, and thank you for sharing with us so much knowledge about Israel. Where can they contact you? Where can they reach you? Where can they get the book?
Well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, on Twitter, I'm David K. Brog, David K. Brog, B as in boy, ROG. Our website is for the Maccabee Task Force is mactaskforce.org. It's MAC for Mac Task Force, one word, .org. And the book, Reclaiming Israel's History, is on Amazon.
Yeah, get it, y'all. Thank you so much, David.
I recommend it. And my promise to people, because I have a lot of friends who know a lot about Israel, and when I told them my book was out, and I as I said, let me make you this promise. If you've been immersed in Israel your whole life, I promise you will learn new things by reading my book, because I spent a long time trying to find new things to reclaim bits and pieces of Israel's history that we've forgotten, that when you know them really do show you the justice of Israel's existence and the justice of Israel's struggle for survival.
Yep. Amen.
It's been a pleasure. Amen. Thank you, Ericka. Thank you, Robert. Always a pleasure to see you.
Thank you, David.
Always. Thanks,
we'll
David.
see you soon.
Thanks.
Oh my gosh. I'm real fired up now. I'm super duper fired up. This is, dude, okay, hold on. Let me go back to the map for a second.
Would you go back to the map, please?
So I wonder how much of the change in support is because of the less people being involved in the church or anything. Because when I'm reading my Bible and I'm reading Exodus, and Moses and leading his people and all this stuff, like I can look on the map and go, my people, the Messiah that I follow was born right here was born, or over here somewhere, Bethlehem, in over here. And then they were eggs, and then they had to, because of famine and all this crazy stuff, they went to Egypt and they were slaves for hundreds of years. And then they got to go home. This is the home of the Jews. Like, what are you talking about? You don't even have to be Christian to know that that's history. 2,000 years ago.
Excuse me, Ericka, when we were talking about the Enemy Aliens Act of 1798, the reason most people don't know it is because they were absent from school that day in history class when it was taught, or they were in a school where the history just wasn't taught. If they're not teaching the history of this country,
yes.
You really think they're teaching the history of another country?
No, they're not. No, they're not.
I hear you, but that's why there's so much work to do. And that's why, look, the war on religion in this country is purposeful.
Yeah.
It's with intent.
That's right.
And we could spend a whole lot of other shows discussing why there's this intent, but it goes back to Obama and his worldview. David Brog was correct. It's not just in Israel. Is Barack Obama, because of his upbringing, saw the United States and Israel as colonial powers and oppressors, and that was the worldview with which he manipulated foreign policy to try to, lack of a better term, subjugate Israel in world politics and raise up Iran. Why else do you give them billions of dollars in the middle of the night, right?
You're a terrible person.
Why else do you cultivate the Muslim Brotherhood, which is really the father organization of Hamas, right? They're an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood, right? So there's a whole lot more to it than that, and I do not claim to have the knowledge or background that David does, but at a high level, that's what we're talking about.
Yeah. Man, oh man.
So I still, however, want to get back to the fact that I love your shirt.
Yeah.
And it's nice merch. And here's the truth. It's both partially a U.S. flag and the Israeli flag. And the byline on the shirt, if you can lift it up a little more without, flashing us, which is "Together we win." Because I know I had to go there. Because together we do win and separate we lose. Right?
Yeah.
Because this battle, there is a line between the Western values that Israel represents and the technology and everything else, and the Judeo-Christian / Western values here. So if you turn around, don't turn around, but the backside of the shirt says, separate we lose. No, I'm just kidding. But
does it?
No.
I was like, no, it doesn't.
It just says Israel Appreciation Day 2024. So where can they get the merch?
You guys, you're going to go to Israel Appreciation Day. Hold on, let me share my screen again.
Nice shirt.
Thank you. Yeah, I love it. It's so soft and comfy, and it fits perfectly. So for those of you out there, this is a small, so it's really like unisex sizes. So if you're a lady ordering something, order a size down from what you would normally order. So if you go and you click on the merch link, it opens up our store. The ladies' apparel is probably lady sized, but I think the stuff that's unisex is basically men's size.
You think the stuff that's unisex is unisex? Is this like what color is George Washington's white horse?
Yes.
Right. I think the stuff that's unisex is unisex. So since I'm the chairman of Israel Appreciation Day, where's my merch?
In Florida.
Yeah, I know.
So learn more about Israel Appreciation Day. You can check out our reel. And you guys, are we allowed to say anything about what's currently happening?
You are.
So get ready for Israel Appreciation Day 2025.
Well, actually, get ready for Israel Appreciation Day, the documentary, because what we're doing is doing a full-fledged film, a documentary, which is going to be off the charts about what makes Israel special, and will reach hearts and minds. Then there's Israel Appreciation Day 2025, which will be in the fall as well.
Yes. And you guys, for real, like I put my water in this forever ago and it's still freezing cold. It's actually kind of annoying because I like room temperature water. But seriously, this is super good. It's keeping my water cold for hours. It's freaking awesome. So get your water bottle. with this awesome freaking art on it, yo. You get art on a t-shirt. I'm just saying. Support the arts.
And support Israel.
Yes.
Ericka?
Yes, Robert.
It's that time.
It's that time.
Mm-hmm.
Are we saying goodbye?
We are.
Goodbye, sweetheart. Well, it's time to go.
Don't give up your day job. It's okay.
See, but it's dead people. You said you only listen to music by dead people.
Are you dead?
It's a dead person that sang it originally. Probably, maybe. I don't know. All right.
But since you're clearly alive, I don't have to listen to you, right? Ben,
Yes.
Ben, help me out here, Ben. Just kidding.
He can't mute me. No, you guys, let's end today. Instead of our usual outro, we're going to leave with the Israel Appreciation Day video. So say thank you to our sponsors, and we'll see you next time.
Hello, and thank you for being here. This is the first ever Israel Appreciation Day.
I believe in the words of Israel's first leader, David Ben-Gurion, who said, "One does not write history, one makes history."
The history of the Jewish people is one of rising and flourishing, despite thousands of years of being attacked, exiled, and scapegoated.
And I'm honored to join all of you in celebrating the first annual Israel Appreciation Day. And there are many reasons to appreciate Israel. It's one of America's closest allies in the world. It's a safe haven for persecuted people, and it's a wellspring of innovation.
That the land of Israel was given to the Jewish people, not by the United Nations, but by God himself.
Well, no one wants to fight. I'd love not to have this weapon, to be in a bulletproof vest, to serve in the IDF.
We cannot allow the worst instincts in our society to win. We must stand proud, and we must stand tall.
This is the Jewish moment, when the Jewish people stands for life over death and shows the lost and confused West how to survive.
From the Chalutzim, the pioneers, the original and early inhabitants of the land, even before the official creation of the State of Israel in 1948.
In my mind, one does not have to be Jewish to support Israel in their battle against the evil that is Hamas. One only has to be human.
Our Jewish community is stronger than ever.
And Israel's two things. It's not just a place, it's also a people.
We're only a generation away from the Holocaust. And understanding, yes, it could happen again. My daughter came home and said, is there going to be another Holocaust?
I couldn't live with myself if I didn't stand with Israel and the Jewish people at this moment in time when they most need us.
A free press during the Israel-Hamas conflict has provided real-time updates on terror attacks. And if we don't learn from those conflicts and wars, we're doomed to repeat the same mistake.
And it takes a lot of courage and a lot of strength to come out and be a voice of one sometimes. What did you do professionally prior to October 7th?
It is your duty as a Jew to shine the light. Go on to social media.
Why would you flourish under persecution? And the answer is that's our nature. That's always been our nature. When our enemies terrorize us and they come after us, what you see is a direct correlation to innovation.
The nation of Israel lives.